I'm Sam Otten, and with me is Jason Book. Hey, Jason.
Hey Sam, how you doing?
Pretty good. I'm excited to be talking about The Flash. In this video, we're going to cover the start of Season 2 of The Flash, which airs on the CW. Season 1 wrapped up, I thought, on a pretty high note. I thought Flash did a nice job of actually keeping a high level of quality all through Season 1. And now going into Season 2, the first episode, I think, really kind of brought the storylines from Season 1 to a nice conclusion. So what do you think about the kickoff to Season 2?
I think it's great so far. First episode, like you said, wasn't anything wrong with it or anything, but I thought, yeah, it kind of was finishing up some storylines and had a feel that a lot was going on. Episode 2 really, in a lot of ways, blew me away. It's like the superhero show of all the shows they've ever done that just manages to have so many, like, winks to the comic, and just they can change things, but it's actually changes for the better. And I was really impressed. I like the action. I like the casting of Jay Garrick. I like the new addition of the policewoman coming in. Really, not much to complain about. It was just another great episode.
Yeah, I feel like the baton has been passed from Season 1 to Season 2, and it was a very smooth transition. I feel like they're keeping that quality. And for comic book fans, it might even be raising it because now we get the multiverse and Earth 2 coming in. People that are Jay Garrick fans can get something to sink their teeth into with the new Jay Garrick coming in. So I agree. It's kind of continuing on and maybe even possibly having the potential for getting better, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But so with Jay Garrick coming into episode 2, I liked the casting as well in general. He had a little bit of like a stiff quality to him, but I actually kind of liked it because he's from a different Earth, so I think it almost kind of makes sense that he's not totally fluid and not suave, as much because, okay, he is actually otherworldly.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked a little bit of the stiffness with him, and I liked the rapport. I thought he played off well from Grant Gustin as Barry Allen.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's funny, I was talking to a guy about it at the comic shop, and I said he was supposed to be from the past, and then he said, well, not really, but the way they always worked it was Jay Garrick was from the Flash in the 40s, and then Barry Allen was in the 60s, so it was kind of the way it was written, but it worked just as well this way. The only part I found a little cheesy was when he first put the helmet on because he wasn't wearing his costume, and the music was all like, it was a huge moment, and it just looked kind of funny for a second. Other than that, it worked really good once he was in the costume.
Yeah, I was a little nervous about that moment too, because I think it was kind of like, for comic book fans that are big lovers of Jay Garrick, that might have been a really cool moment, and so they have this big build and everything, and slow pan or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you think about the 4 million people that watch the Flash TV show, I'm guessing a pretty small percentage are actually huge Jay Garrick fans.
That's true. Yeah.
I think this show has reached a lot of just the general population. Only like 40,000 people read the Flash comic book.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
4 million people are watching the show. So
yeah,
I thought that was a little bit overkill because I think a lot more regular people watch the show probably.
And it's funny you mentioned that about the people watching it versus reading it, because once again, like last year when we talked about this, while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, this is better than any Flash comic almost I've ever read. And I think the reason why is because they've taken it from a character who's kind of, he always had a supporting cast, but not like this in the show, and bringing in all the other characters from different DC books and different villains and whatnot. It really, it really lends itself to being a TV show more than a comic sometimes, I think.
Yeah, so you said earlier about how they've made some changes, but they might be improvements. I definitely agree with you to say, like, the improvements have been better for TV. I think the stuff that they've changed was the right call for a TV show.
Totally.
And then, if you try to compare TV show to comics, I agree with you. I mean, I think the emotionality that can come with the Joe West scenes, which we've talked about how they've been so strong throughout, and I think into Season 2 there was some really good stuff with Joe West again. And the stuff with Barry and his dad. I mean, you can have that emotion in the comics, but when you have good actors and good directing, it can just reach a whole nother level too. So to actually see real people acting that out, I think has been good as well.
Yeah, and just a quick side note on that too, like they tried doing like a digital version of this continuity comic, and it doesn't do that well. They picked some good artists and decent writers, but there's just something, like, no pun intended, they're really capturing lightning in a bottle with this show. Yeah,
and put the emotional stuff together with, I think a nice take on Grodd in Season 1 and Captain Cold and stuff like that. Yeah, and now I like too, like, so they had Reverse Flash in season 1. Now they're setting up Zoom.
Yes.
And I think it makes sense that they might not be the same. I think it makes sense for the TV show that, no, let's just have Zoom be this new thing who's more of like a multiverse type villain.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And do you know who the voice of Zoom is?
No.
The voice of Zoom is the guy, I can't remember his name, Tony something or other. He did the voice of, he played Candyman in that horror movie, and I think his name's Tony Todd. He's been in lots of like horror movies and has a really cool voice. And as soon as I heard that voice in the show, I was like, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like it too how last season they kicked off the season with the, particle accelerator accident, and then the villain of the week could come from that particle accelerator accident. Mm-hmm. And now I really like the structure for season 2 where we have the breach in the multiverse, and now the villain of the week can actually come through that breach. To me, I like the parallelism of that structure of, you have a big event at the beginning of the season, and that also is the avenue through which your villains come.
Totally. I mean, because Flash has always been a science-based character, and they've really made the show work that way with Star Labs being such a central part of it. So it doesn't feel formulaic at all. It feels like they can go a lot of different places with it. That being said, I didn't care too much for the villain because it really seemed a lot like Sandman. I know that there's probably a DC character that is this guy, but to anyone that's seen any of the Spidey movies, I'm like, yeah, they could have picked someone a little different for this episode,
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it might be okay because we're probably never going to see him again. So for a one-off thing, it's probably forgivable, but I know what you mean.
Totally.
So you mentioned Patty Spivot coming in, so what are your other thoughts on her?
I think it's cool. They're really, at least to me, playing it up like Barry can have some sort of love interest here, or at least someone where he's kind of flirting with and, kind of get away from the whole Iris thing for a while. And so I like that addition. And it also gives somebody to work with Joe that's a new character as well. And it just seems like a really good addition to the cast.
Yeah, I felt pretty good about it. And it'll give some separation time for Barry and Iris, because Iris is still dealing with Eddie, at the end of season 1, Eddie making the sacrifice.
Right.
So I think it's nice to have another female character come in. I think Iris and Barry can still have their thing down the road, but with the show being successful, they can have like a 5-year plan instead of a 1-year plan.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
so,
it's got a lot of time to work on that.
Yeah. Now, do you have any predictions on Zoom, or is it too early to kind of have thoughts on that, about who Zoom might be or what his overall motivations might be?
Well, since I know that the voice is done by this Tony Todd guy or whatever his name was from these 80s horror movies and stuff, I don't think he's actually playing the guy in the suit. So I don't think it's going to end up being someone that we've seen before. It could be a completely new villain. Like Jay Garrick made it sound like he's just a guy who wants to be the only fast guy out there in any world. So it's kind of just like a good template for a villain to just be anybody. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's got potential for that. I'm more interested in this whole Flash of Two Worlds thing before we finish. Like, those homages were amazing in there.
Oh, yeah,
like, when he ran around the corner and it was like the cover, I was like, are you kidding me?
Even with the hand coming up from, and then the two flashes. Yeah, it
was like perfect. It was so well done. But with the whole multiverse thing, I'd love to see a Barry Allen, some sort of, breach fight thing. Like, that would be so cool. Or an older Barry Allen, a young Barry Allen,
Yeah, I feel like we are going to get something like that. I mean, I think they'll play up Jay Garrick for a while, but I do think we're going to see another Barry Allen.
Yeah, and maybe we'll finally get Wally West or something. Who knows, right?
Yeah, it could be quite a different direction. So I think it's pretty exciting that they've opened that up. I think, and then so far I think they're handling it well.
Yeah.
The only really minor complaint I have about season 2 so far was just that Barry's dad got released and exonerated, and then he's now gone right away. I'm like, really?
Yeah. What I was thinking maybe with that is that the reason they did that, because it was a big surprise. You kind of thought he would just be a guy. Okay, well, I'm going to be part of your crew and everything now, but they're maybe going to leave it open for him to come back in some interesting way in the storylines, like guest appearances a couple times a year or something.
Yeah. I felt a little weird about him leaving like that and stuff, and Barry sort of eventually being okay with it. But other than that, and I think they will bring him back, but other than that, season's off to a really strong start, I think.
Yeah, just one final point on that. I do know, if you think about it, when you read things about when guys get out of prison and stuff, I think it's very true to that. It was written the way a lot of inmates, or convicts have trouble adapting to just being around people again and like having a regular life because they've led such a different life for so many years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe when they do have them return, they might explore some of that stuff more, like the adjustment period.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, like you said, not a huge complaint. It's been a pretty stellar start so far.